Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Swas. Oh, so real quick, the intro song. We're running a contest. I don't know if you saw the comment I posted in the college football video. So we're running a contest. You have till next weekend. Email me your submission, your suggestion for the new intro song. I'm going to pick 4 finalists. Then you all are going to vote on what the best intro song is. I think this is a fun idea. No, it's not a response to the comments complaining. The comments are going to complain regardless. I can put out the best song ever, and the comments are going to complain. So this is not in response to the comments. I just think this is a fun idea. Whoever song wins, I will buy the track from you, and then I'll give you producer cred in the description of the video. So if you create music or know somebody that creates music, keeping the visuals the same. So show them the visuals that I use for the intro. We're using the same thing. See what you can come up with. I'm picking 4 finalists, and then you all will vote next weekend, wildcard weekend. Anyway, we got 2 games here on Saturday. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the first one. I have a prop, I bet. We'll go through it. Obviously, the second game, Bengals Steelers, that's the one we want to talk about. But going to go through them both. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Swas. Hey, Swas. The Swas. Hey, get the Swas.
First up, we got Cleveland on the road in Baltimore, and the Ravens are laying a 20-piece in this one, like we're watching a Big Ten game. Ravens laying a full 20, total sitting at 41.5. Let's take a quick look at the donut charts. Let's take a quick look at the donut charts. According to the data, action's coming in slightly on the Baltimore side. I mean, pretty split. About 54% of the tickets, 54% of the money. As I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's talk about this one briefly. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this game. The current situation with the Browns offense is a mess. There's no Njoku. There's no Nick Chubb. There's no Jerome Ford. There's no Cedric Tillman. There's no Jedrick Wills at left tackle. They're also missing DeJuan Jones, who's the next left tackle up. So we got a third-string tackle starting in this game. That's not new. That's been the case with Cleveland for a lot of this season. Bailey Zappi starting at quarterback. Who knows what to expect out of him, especially against the Baltimore defense that's been lights out down the stretch of this season. Weeks 1 through 10, Baltimore's defense was a concern. They're allowing 25.3 points per game, 6.4 yards per play. But since week 11, they've really locked it down on the defensive side of the ball. 16.3 points per game, 5.1 yards per play. So safe to say, I don't have a lot of faith in the Cleveland offense in this game. And honestly, neither do odds makers. Their team total set at 10.5. Keep in mind, this is a meaningful game for Baltimore. They do need to win to clinch the division. Now, do they need to win by 20? No, absolutely not. They just need to win. But I expect the defense, at least for the first half, to come out strong. I don't know how Cleveland's going to move the ball in this game. But as far as the bet I actually placed in this game, check this out. So Lamar Jackson, we set the number at 25.5 pass attempts. And you could see early in the season, he was going over that mark more often than not. Only 4 times did he go under 25.5 pass attempts. You look in the last 5, though, 4 of his last 5 games, he failed to reach 25.5 pass attempts. So recently, Lamar Jackson hasn't been throwing the ball as much. In fact, last week on Christmas Day, Baltimore beat the Texans 30-2. Lamar Jackson only dropped back to pass 15 times. So as of late, last handful of games, Lamar Jackson has not been dropping back to pass nearly as much. And if you check out this graphic here, this is the last 30 times that Lamar Jackson has dropped back to pass, less than 26 times in a game. You can see he very rarely goes over 207.5 passing yards when he drops back to pass less than 26 times. Now, the last time Lamar Jackson played Cleveland, it was that shootout against Jameis Winston, which was awesome. I had Browns money line in that game. It was a great one. But he dropped back to pass, I think, 36, 37 times in that game. Obviously, they're favored by 20 points. We're not expecting to see anything like that. So if you look at the last 4 times Lamar Jackson has played the Cleveland Browns and dropped back to pass 35 times or less, because we're not expecting Lamar Jackson to drop back 40 times in this game. Absolutely not. He stayed under 207.5 passing yards 3 of the last 4. And on top of that, Cleveland runs a lot of man coverage, 38% man coverage frequency, 4th most in the NFL. Lamar Jackson always much more comfortable throwing the ball against zone coverage. He's got great numbers against man as well, but he's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the NFL against zone coverage. So he's going to see this Cleveland man coverage, the Cleveland pass rush. If you're John Harbaugh, why are you even risking it? Why are you even dropping Lamar Jackson back to pass in this game? Just hand the ball off. You're 20-point favorites. The Browns have nothing to play for. Bailey Zappi starting at quarterback. Lamar Jackson could very well be benched in the second half of this game. So I took Lamar Jackson's under here. under 207.5 passing yards. I doubt he finishes the game. Hopefully Baltimore's in control. Bailey Zappi throws a couple picks, a pick six or something. Just put this game out of reach. Take Lamar Jackson out in the third quarter and let him stay under 207.5 passing yards. So I bet that. Let's do it. Next game. Cincinnati on the road in Pittsburgh, and this is definitely a meaningful game. The Steelers are catching 2.5 points at home. Total sitting at pretty much 48, couple 48.5. Actually, I see a couple 47.5. Pretty much sitting around 48 for the total. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to the data, action's coming in pretty heavily on the Cincinnati side. About 65% of the tickets, about 70% of the money. As I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So real quick, before we get into this one, we need to talk about playoff implications. Like I said before, both of these teams are definitely playing for something. In order to make the playoffs, the Bengals need to win this game. They need Denver to lose, and they need Miami to tie or lose. That's what the Bengals need to get in. So obviously, this is a meaningful game for Cincinnati. On the Pittsburgh side, they can actually still win the division if Baltimore loses to Cleveland, which probably isn't going to happen. But if Baltimore loses to Cleveland and Pittsburgh beats Cincinnati in the Saturday night game, the Steelers can still win the division and get the 3 seed. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If Baltimore beats Cleveland in the early game, which, let's be honest, they're going to. So when Baltimore beats Cleveland in the early game, a lot of people think this game becomes meaningless for the Steelers. That's not true. If Baltimore beats Cleveland and then the Steelers lose this game to Cincinnati, if the Chargers win on Sunday, the Steelers would then fall to the 6th seed, which means they would go to Baltimore in the first round rather than Houston. So even if the Ravens beat the Browns, I shouldn't even say if, even when the Ravens beat the Browns, this is still a meaningful game for Pittsburgh. They don't want to go to Baltimore. They want to go to Houston and play the Texans. So this is a very meaningful game on both sides here. So let's go ahead and start with some matchup trends here. Cincinnati has struggled with the Steelers. They're 1-4 against the spread in their last 5, 1-4 straight up. Since 2010, the Bengals are just 9-19-1 against the spread against the Steelers, 7-22 straight up. So they've struggled with Pittsburgh, and specifically on the road in Pittsburgh, 5-11 against the spread, 5-11 straight up in their last 16 trips out here to Pittsburgh. Also, their last 13 times favored against the Steelers, 3-10 against the spread, 4-9 straight up. And as far as the total goes, this matchup has trended towards the over. 6-3 to the over in the last 9 meetings, 3-1 to the over the last 4 meetings in Pittsburgh. So historical trends tell us Steelers and over. Not much of a trends guy, but for those of you looking for trends, there you go. So let's match these two teams up on the field, and we'll start with the Bengals offense against the Steelers defense. On paper, Cincinnati should have the slight edge here offensively. They're 7th in yards per play, 7th in success rate on the season. Steelers defense 15th and 16th. And if we isolate it to just the last handful of games, Cincinnati has the huge edge, especially in the passing attack. Since week 13, the Bengals are averaging over 322 passing yards per game, 8.2 yards per attempt. A 70% success rate per dropback is crazy. An average passer rating of 116. And the Steelers pass defense, if you just take out that one game against Cleveland, since week 13, they've been getting cooked. 8.7 yards per pass attempt allowed, over 63% success rate per dropback, average opponent pass rating over 117. So based on the recent production we've seen from these two units, this is looking like Cincinnati might carve the Steelers up. And check this out. Since week 13, the Bengals are averaging over 31 points per game, 7 yards per play, almost a 60% success rate. Meanwhile, the Steelers defense, if you take out the Cleveland game, they're allowing 33 points per game, 6.9 yards per play, success rate over 55%. And this is a Bengals offense that's even been running the ball a little bit in the second half of the year. Since week 11, they're averaging 4.7 yards per carry. Now, success rate is still down under 39%. So by no means will you hear me say Cincinnati has a good rushing attack, but in comparison to weeks 5 through 10, it's been better. So, I mean, based on what we looked at so far, Bengals are about to carve the Steelers up here. Now, I know you might be thinking, Kyle, well, Joey Porter's back at corner for the Steelers, which is huge, but he's been back the last 2 games, and they got cooked in both of those games. Not saying he doesn't matter. I'm just saying Joey Porter isn't, in my eyes, the savior to the Steelers defense. He came back 2 games ago, and they've struggled against the pass in back-to-back games.
So I just want to make a quick correction there. I said Joey Porter's been back for the last 2 games. That's not correct. He played in the Baltimore game and the Philly game. He didn't play against the Chiefs. The point I was trying to make is the Steelers got cooked through the air the last 2 games. He did play anyway. So I don't know if Joey Porter being back means all of a sudden the Steelers pass defense is great. That's the point I was trying to make. I just messed it up there.
Not saying he doesn't matter. I'm just saying Joey Porter isn't, in my eyes, the savior to the Steelers defense. Now, to be fair to Pittsburgh, Cincinnati's offense is nowhere near healthy either. I think T. Higgins is going to play, though. He's been practicing all week. He's listed as questionable. Chase Brown, though, he's listed as questionable. He hasn't practiced all week. So I'm not sure if Chase Brown is going to be out there. Obviously, Trent Brown is out. He's been out all year. But Mims, the guy who's been starting in Trent Brown's spot, he's listed as questionable. So we don't know if Mims is going to play. They might be down to their third tackle over there, right tackle. Speaking of the Bengals offensive line, let's take a look at the matchup on the line of scrimmage. And this is where we see the advantage start to shift over to Pittsburgh's side. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that the Steelers' defensive front has the edge over Cincinnati's offensive line, both creating space in the run game and pass protection. Steelers' pass rush could be a problem here. That being said, let's give Joe Burrow some credit. He's been one of, if not the best quarterback in the NFL, handling pressure so far this year. First in yards per pass attempt under pressure, second in pass rating. Now, he does take some sacks. He's 20th in pressure to sack rate, also 20th in turnover-worthy play rate under pressure. So he takes some sacks. He puts the ball in harm's way a little bit, but as a whole, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when handling pressure. And this Steelers pass rush hasn't looked very good. In weeks 1 through 14, they were averaging 2.41 seconds per pressure, 6th best in the NFL in that span. Since week 15, their last 3 games, up at 2.63 seconds per pressure, 26th in the NFL. So this Steelers pass rush hasn't been very effective, starting to look like a great matchup for Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense. That being said, we have to look at one thing. Look at the bottom of this graphic here. That's a screenshot of the Steelers' last 3 games. The Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs. Why am I bringing that up? Look at Pro Football Focus's pass blocking grades for those 3 teams. Week 15, Philadelphia, 4th. Week 16, Baltimore, 7th. Week 17, Kansas City, 8th. Now they play Cincinnati, who's 29th. So yeah, the Steelers pass rush hasn't been much of a factor in their last 3 games. In fact, they've been struggling to pressure the quarterback in the last 3 games. They played 3 consecutive games against top 10 pass protections. Now they see the Bengals, who are 29th in PFF pass blocking grades. So tell me this isn't the perfect spot for the Steelers pass rush for TJ Watt to just show up out of nowhere after struggling for a few games and make a huge play, force a turnover. I think it's a beautiful wake-up call spot for the Steelers pass rush personally. And if we look deeper into the matchup for Joe Burrow and the Bengals passing attack, honestly, I don't even know if I really like it. So the Steelers run a ton of single high safety looks, most in the NFL actually, almost 68% of their defensive snaps are in single high safeties. Joe Burrow has definitely been more successful throwing the ball in 2 high safeties. You can see 6th in yards per attempt, 3rd in pass rating, 1st in turnover-worthy play rate. That's against 2 high safeties. Against single high safeties, 14th, 6th, and 9th. So, okay, there's something if you like Pittsburgh. And check this out. Early in the season, the Steelers were running a ton of cover 3. In weeks 1 through 9, over 45% cover 3 frequency, 2nd most in the NFL. Since week 10, though, they've been running a ton of cover 1, over 37% cover 1 frequency since week 10. That's a lot of cover 1, 3rd most in the NFL in that span. The reason I'm bringing that up, Joe Burrow has really struggled against cover 1, 31st in yards per pass attempt, 22nd in completion percentage, 28th in turnover-worthy throw rate. So this might not be the best matchup for Joe Burrow. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, saying you don't like the matchup for Joe Burrow. This passing attack's been so good. And I mean, he did play well against the Steelers earlier in the year, back in week 13, 28-38. This was at home in Cincinnati. 309 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick, a 112.7 passer rating. He's also played pretty well against Pittsburgh over the course of his career. 6 career starts against the Steelers, 66% completions, over 262 yards per game, 7.4 yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns, 9 picks. I suppose that isn't great. He did throw 4 of those picks in one game, though. I mean, if you look at his game logs lifetime against the Steelers, he had 1 really bad game in 2022. Other than that, he's played pretty well against the Steelers. So I know saying, hey, I don't like the matchup for Joe Burrow, that sounds kind of crazy. He played great against the Steelers earlier in the year, and that passing attack has been a force. That being said, I think the Steelers pass rush is just so long overdue to make some big plays. They played back-to-back games against the Eagles, that offensive line, the Ravens and that offensive line, the Chiefs and that offensive line with Mahomes. It just seems like the prime game at home season finale to show up and TJ Watt strip a sack or something. I know it sounds crazy. It's not really based in any data. I think the Steelers defense is going to show up and force a couple turnovers in this game. Now, what about the matchup on the other side? We got the Steelers offense against the Cincinnati defense, and there's a lot of red on the screen in these 2 graphics. Edge definitely goes to Pittsburgh, though. Steelers offensively, 21st in yards per play, 25th in success rate. Against the Bengals defense, 22nd and 30th. And this is a Bengals defense, I mean, specifically a defensive front that just seems to be falling apart. Since week 11, they can't stop the run for shit. Since week 11, they're allowing 5.15 yards per carry, over 129 rushing yards per game. Now, 41.1% success rate per rush actually isn't bad. That's pretty solid. But look at the opponents. The Chargers, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns, and Denver, the Broncos. So in their last 6 games, they're allowing over 5.1 yards per carry against 6 offenses that have been struggling to run the ball all year. It's not like those are dynamite rushing attacks. Who's the best rushing attack on that list? The Chargers or the Steelers? I mean, those are not good rushing offenses there. So this Bengals defensive front is falling apart. And I mean, the cause is probably right here. The injuries. Logan Wilson is still out. Sheldon Rankins is still out. Sam Hubbard is still out. That's 3 starters from the Bengals defensive front 7 out for this game. They also might be missing all 3 corners. I mean, Dax Hill and DJ Turner, they've been out. That's not new. But Cam Taylor-Britt was just added to the injury report on, I think, Thursday or Friday. So I don't know if he's going to play either. I think he's going to. He participated in light practice, but there's all kinds of problems going on with this Bengals defense right now. And it's great news for the Steelers to see they've been struggling against the run, because this is a Pittsburgh offense that wants to run the football. They're 4th in rushing frequency on the season. And in their last 5 games, I mean, look, the success rate is below 35%. That's not good, but they have been running the ball a little bit. I mean, 4.7 yards per carry is good. Over 121 rushing yards per game. It's not a good rushing attack. It's been okay, but against this Bengals defensive front that's been struggling to stop bad rushing attacks, Steelers should be able to run the ball in this game. So if you're a Steelers fan or you plan on betting Pittsburgh in this game, definitely nice to know that Russell Wilson probably will have run support. Now, what about the passing attack? Will Russell Wilson be able to throw the ball in this game? And actually, if you look at the last 4 games, 3 of them have actually been solid for the Bengals pass defense. Weeks 14 through 16, they allowed just 212.7 passing yards per game, 6.3 yards per attempt, average opponent pass rating down at 67. Last week, they struggled against Bo Nix. So you look at this and might say, hey, it's just one bad game. The 3 games before the Denver game, they were playing good defense against the pass. Hold on. Look at the opponents. Dallas, Cooper Rush. Tennessee, Mason Rudolph. Cleveland, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. 3 backup quarterbacks. And if you isolate it to the last 5 games where Cincinnati played a starting quarterback, they're allowing over 291 passing yards per game, 9.3 yards per pass attempt, success rate up close to 62% per dropback, an average opponent pass rating of 122. So the last 5 times, including the Bo Nix game that just happened, the last 5 times that Cincinnati has seen starting quarterbacks, they've gotten absolutely cooked through the air. Now, if you are looking to bet Cincinnati in this game, you can point at the fact that they've been running a lot of too high safety looks recently. Since week 8, actually over 57% frequency. That's second most in the NFL. Russell Wilson definitely much better against single high safeties. 7th in yards per attempt, 7th in passer rating, 1st in big time throw rate, 5th in turnover-worthy play rate. Against 2 high safeties, 20th, 24th, 22nd, and 13th. So there's something if you plan on betting the Bengals. Russell Wilson has struggled against 2 high safeties. That being said, George Pickens back on the field for the Steelers. He was back on Christmas Day as well. He didn't just return, but George Pickens being on the field is a big deal for Pittsburgh. In the games where both Russell Wilson and George Pickens played, Steelers averaged over 261 passing yards per game, 8.1 yards per pass attempt, 98.7 average passer rating, success rate up close to 54%. Look at the 3 games Russell Wilson played without George Pickens on the field, 6.3 yards per attempt, under 168 passing yards per game. So we're definitely talking about a night and day difference here when Pickens is on the field versus when he's off the field. That being said, we do have to mention that of those 7 games where he was going off, a lot of them were against some really bad defenses. Do have to point that out, but I mean, what do you call Cincinnati? Because I would classify them as a really bad defense also. I mean, do we not remember what Russell Wilson just did to Cincinnati week 13? He went on the road, 29-38, 414 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pick, and a 126.4 passer rating. I don't see why we wouldn't expect Russell Wilson to have another big game here at home. The weather's supposed to be fine. It's supposed to be cold, not very windy, 10 to 12 miles per hour. Should be fine in terms of throwing conditions. Russell Wilson should be able to make throws. Steelers should be able to run the ball. Is Joe Burrow going to have opportunities to make some throws and make some big plays? Of course, and I'm sure he'll make some of them. But like I said, I think that Steelers pass rush is due to make a big play. And in my opinion, the way this goes, Joe Burrow is going to need to be absolutely perfect in this game. And if the Steelers are able to force a turnover or make a big play, it's just going to put them in too much of a hole, because Cincinnati's defense is just too bad that if Pittsburgh's defense steals a free 7 points, it might be too much. So Steelers catching points at home. I'm going to be on Pittsburgh here. Give me the 2.5. I do think the game probably goes over the total if you can get a 47.5. But to be honest, I'm not very interested in the total. I'm just going to play the Steelers at plus 2.5, maybe even hit the money line a little bit too. Live show is going to be at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to do the bowl game first because that one kicks off at 11. Then we're going to do college basketball because we have Florida, Kentucky starts at 11 too. So we're going to get going early because we got some sports starting really early for Saturday morning. We'll do the NFL last. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Hit me up in the Discord if you need me. The spreadsheets are almost done. The Sauce Network app almost back. I'm very excited about that. Put a lot of work into it. I'll let you know when it's ready to roll. Let's have ourselves a good one. Please remember to bet responsibly. Later.